I mean, reading together has just been one of the greatest surprises of homeschooling, of learning together. Mm-hmm. I've always loved to read, but I didn't know that this kind of practice could still be bearing fruit, years after everybody's graduated.
Welcome back to the Rooted Minds podcast, where we come together as a family to talk about books and our emotions. And in today's episode, we are talking about what it means to read together as a family.
Yeah, I'm so excited to talk about this because I think, first of all, we never thought about homeschooling when we were starting off in our parenting journey. Yeah, we weren't. And so when we started homeschooling, it looked very much like public school because I needed it to look like we're playing school at home.
Needed the structure.
I needed the structure, and the structure was totally exhausting and overwhelming. And the thing that I didn't expect was that reading together would be such a bonding, unifying, just place where we all could breathe.
Yeah.
Like in the beginning, the read aloud time was just after lunch, and it was a success if I put everybody to sleep because I had a moment of peace. But it's not because the stories were not engaging.
Yeah.
And I think we really enjoyed it. So what was y'all's experience just in the beginning of reading together?
I like that you said that read alouds gave us a moment to breathe, because that's what it really felt like. It felt just like a moment of peace and calm in the middle of the day,
or together.
Yeah. And so, for us it looked like a lot of different things, and it varied depending on what we were reading or how much of us were there and that sort of thing. But a lot of times, we'd have a little thing to fidget with or something. Maybe it was some
silly putty
or
Legos
or something like that. And coloring, and so it just felt like a moment of peace and calm. And there are a lot of books now that I have if I look at them or think about them, then I hear Mom's voice reading them. So
yeah, you get to work on your voices if you're reading out loud.
I think for me, because reading was such a hard thing for me, reading became not safe. But whenever we read together, it changed my perspective of reading, which I think helped me later whenever I was able to read, made me actually want to read. But I think for me it feels it was super impactful for me because obviously I'm the youngest, and so I encountered read alouds for probably the longest amount of time. But it's actually part of the story of how I became a Christian is because Mom was reading aloud a mission biography, and it I was 4, but
yeah, she was laying on the couch listening so intently until she sat up and she was like, I need this.
Oh,
how can I? And just the funny things that you don't even know that your kids are listening, and all of a sudden there's this life-changing moment in the middle of a story.
Yeah,
which is beautiful.
And I feel it also I'm sure for you guys too, but for me especially, I feel it really reading aloud and having the safety of reading together and quieting together. I feel being still together, I feel is such a safe activity if you're all actually doing it together, that I feel it really helped grow my imagination too, reading together.
I would say what you said was very bonding, to wait on the story. Also, we didn't read the entire book in one sitting, so there was the anticipation of what do you guys think is gonna happen next? Can't wait till next time we're gonna listen, because we have the shared experience of it, of the story, which was very bonding. And then the things that you can do, I don't know, for me there was a lot of things you are quiet and you're listening to the book, and while you're doing that you're playing together quietly if we're playing, and so that's helpful in sharing and being gentle. I found it like was great for like creating a good space for questions. You can talk about a lot of different things when you ask a question about a book. So I mean, the environment you guys created was very open to whatever. Like, why is this? Like, can somebody explain to me why they're sad right now? I don't get it.
There were, I remember times, like, especially with the Legos, where you would be, like, raking through the Legos. It's, like, the loudest,
so loud.
sound you had to possibly make. And so I would ask those questions of, like, can anybody tell me what just happened in this chapter?
That's what I was thinking about.
You get those narration things playing back in, and it was always amazing to me what you could hear through the raking. But I think one of my favorite things is that we have this like shared like experience of all of these books that gives us a vocabulary to talk about emotions or talk about like ideas or themes, because we all have read so many books together. We have vocabulary like Be Calmed from Carry On Mr. Bowditch, or just like so many like secret jokes almost, and those inside jokes of funny things like Puddle Glum from The Silver Chair, and I think Dad wrote that one to us, and man, you do a good Puddle Glum.
True.
And there's something like so bonding about just the fact that we're like, our emotions are all unified when we're reading a book, because we're like rooting for a character together and we're feeling sadness with the character all at the same time. Like those types of things where we become unified in feeling during the book. And so those are really powerful, like feels like why we're doing this podcast.
Exactly. And another thing it did was bring us all together at the same time. Like, yes, we're all homeschooling, like doing our work, but we're all doing our various own tasks throughout the day. And so it was like a thing we can do together that we all move forward in.
I think something else I thought of really quick is like you guys doing voices. Like as a child, I feel like that helped me like understand what appropriate responses are to things. Like different tones or different like reactions in books was helpful. Like even back to like Albert the Bear, like a kid's book, like you guys reading like with silly voices or serious voices, but like having the change also helped me as like an interactive learner. It was helpful for me to stay engaged whenever you guys
and there were definitely seasons where like I would be sick and I couldn't read in the same way, and so I think that's when we listened to like the Lord of the Rings on Audible, and I don't know that I could compete with that guy. And just such a there's definitely those readers that are just so incredible on Audible that even if you're not good at voices or you haven't done that much,
Audible is a good place to go.
Audible is a great way to cultivate that.
And then like our read aloud practice at home, like it moved into our vacation time, and that was the thing that we do on road trips, as we listen to books, and so that became like the thing we were like looking forward, like quick, let's get back in the car because we gotta hear what
happens.
Yeah,
and you need like a good series. We've had some really lengthy road trips, and it's amazing the difference between like watching a 2-hour movie on a trip.
It gets old so fast.
You get like 3 movies for a 6-hour road trip versus you may not even be able to finish one book.
True.
It's very true.
Yeah. So I think just like as far as like practical, like how if you aren't reading together as a family or you haven't done that much, like what would you guys think if you were giving tips? I know you're not parents, but like what are some things that you feel like could make it easier for people to get started? Or
well, something that like I remember we did later when I went off to college, and just different times when we weren't able to get together as much, as we didn't like read aloud in the same sense, but we would like read the same book together, like reading 2 chapters of the same book and being able to like talk about it. That's like it's not quite the same as like being all together,
like a book club,
you know, but it's at least like
well, that's something that comes maybe down the line after you've established this. But what if you're just starting it?
I think a routine helps. Like a certain time of day where everybody agrees to set a certain amount of time aside.
Yeah.
And it's like we did after lunch. Like just an hour or just 30 minutes. Whatever time you have to budget for your reading, it's just about agreeing upon that time, setting aside to do it consistently.
That's helpful.
Yeah, I definitely think reading books that have short chapters.
Yeah, that's
because then I remember like Little Pilgrim's Progress was one of those where the chapters are like a page and a half. So you could get through maybe 4 chapters and feel like you've really made progress.
Accomplished something.
Versus something where a chapter might take an hour to read.
like Lord of the Rings.
That's really challenging.
And I would also say like along the same lines, like for me knowing myself and how I thought like when I was younger, it was helpful like to start out with like something that's less challenging to comprehend.
Yes.
Like maybe more adventurous, maybe more fun, like Phantom Tollbooth or like, you know, books like that where it's like
that's true.
Maybe for me I enjoyed listening more with something like maybe more adventurous at the beginning, and then as I grew in that I was able to go to something maybe like still simple like but like Number the Stars. Like that's deeper thoughts but still an easy read. And so it's like building up the capacity and giving grace to where.
That's good.
So considering your audience is really important.
Yes.
Because you can jump into the deep end with a really complex book, but small chapters, like comprehensive, like easy to understand books.
Or something that's fun or something that's enjoyable. And I have a whole list of all the books that we've read together.
Yeah.
From the start of our homeschooling journey.
Yeah. One I was just going to say too, that we were also willing to not finish a chapter. There were times when we didn't, but most of that was because I always thought you did a great job at cultivating like this culture of curiosity. Didn't mean to alliterate there, but you did that because we wanted them to be listening, but we also wanted them to be curious.
Right. We want them to want to come back.
Yeah. And I remember there were times in the middle of chapters where somebody would be like, "What is that?" And then we'd pause it. You'd pause it. And then we'd just, what do you think? You know? And began a conversation about it. So we didn't end up finishing the chapter at that moment. But, you know, it's just that kind of flexibility. Like, I have to finish the chapter. Not necessarily, you know.
Because the goal wasn't about reading the book.
It wasn't,
You still made it about relationship. I think attuning to really the questions also. There's like emotion behind questions most of the time. And I think the fact that you guys took time to answer those is like seeing us, which is very sweet.
Yeah, and I think, you know, there's also just like the environment. I think we talked about like a couple of episodes ago, like where do you like to go to read slowly? And I think this is the kind of environment like you're considering, like if you have small kids, a snack is great. Because their mouths are doing something other than talking or making noise. You know, you've got a captive audience for maybe 10 minutes, you know, however that long that snack will last. But, you know, I also remember like starting the fire and having cozy space with pillows and blankets and, you know, just lamps on or some kind of like atmosphere that says, hey, we're just slowing down for just a little bit. And this is a time to slow down. But I think like there's such a, if you're willing to go through the hard part of establishing a culture, that will take time. There will be times when even the most interested of your kids are not going to be interested. You will not be interested because like sometimes the books that you're reading are not books that you would choose for yourself.
That's a great point.
But the consistency over time really does bring about a really beautiful thing.
And it takes time to learn anything. And
that's right.
Yeah, I think that's real, that your kids will mirror your attitude towards it.
And like I think there's also like there are ways that you can offer like fun goals or rewards. I never feel bad about doing things like that, but like if there's a movie that they want to see that's based on a book, read the book first. And the reward can be a fun movie night with watching that book, because eventually you'll learn that the book is always better than the movie.
Yes.
You're like,
it's true.
Mr. Popper's Penguins, for some reason that one is one of my favorite books. And the movie is like, well, there's a Mr. Popper and there are penguins, but I'm not even sure. And not that the movie is bad, but it's just...
It's not the same as the book.
Definitely not the same as the book.
It's a fun movie,
it's
but it
inspired
doesn't carry the same impact.
Yeah, exactly. Or even something like Jane Eyre. You know, like, I love that movie, honestly. But I don't know that I would love it the way I do if I hadn't read the book and I don't know what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Well, part of the fun thing about reading a book is that you sort of become a co-creator with the writer. Something Andy's talked about before. And that your imagination becomes part of the story.
It's true.
You know, whereas in a movie, you're passively just sort of watching.
And something very big difference between movies and books is you can see inside the mind in books. And I think that's such a cool... unique quality to books. Well, like Jane Eyre, a big part of Jane Eyre is hearing her thoughts and what she's thinking about things and how she's feeling about things. But in the movie it's like micro expressions, you know.
Yeah,
you just have to read her face and go, oh wow, she really does not want to marry her cousin.
Wonder why.
That starts the whole thing off in the movie with her and the cousins or whatever. Anyway, we won't talk about Jane Eyre movie versus book, but I also just think, like, some of our other fun things that we've done is taking that, like, reading experience beyond just reading. And, like, I know we've done, like, map making with The Hobbit or other fun, like, experiences or activities to, like, doing tea parties after reading Alice in Wonderland.
Or I was going to say making meals.
Finding Turkish Delight and trying it out.
Even when they're younger, just coloring what they hear.
But just like, you know, like taking those things that you've learned and taking them beyond just the book reading, the book knowledge, and
because that's what will bring it to life.
Living.
Yeah, well, and those are the things like finding ways to engage in more than one way, the multi-sensory approach.
Yeah.
Like it also really just like cements the story inside of you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that you don't forget the tea party that you had because you read Alice in Wonderland and what that. So
exactly.
Yeah. So I just think, I mean, reading together has just been one of the, like, the greatest surprises of homeschooling, of learning together. I've always loved to read, but I didn't know that this kind of practice could still be bearing fruit, you know, years after everybody's graduated. So just, I encourage you to find ways to incorporate family reading, and I'd love to hear how you do it. So share with us in the
comments.
In the comments how you incorporate reading with your family. We'll see you next time.
Thanks again for joining us on the Rooted Minds podcast. We're all really passionate about experiencing stories together. We'd really love to hear your thoughts about today's topic, so comment them below. But until next time, may you find joy, grace, and peace in the pages you turn.